How's it going, everyone? Welcome to my channel. My name is Swanee, and for today's video, we're going to be giving you our thoughts on Star Wars Outlaws. Now, a big thanks to Ubisoft for providing us with an early access review code. This game is absolutely massive, and without the code, we wouldn't have been able to get this review out at a reasonable time, so big thanks to them. And for this review, I'll be doing it a little bit differently compared to most of my other reviews on this channel. I know a lot of you guys really seem to enjoy our back and forth discussion videos for Helldivers 2, so I figured we'd try something similar for a big review type video. Cookie and myself have been playing Star Wars Outlaws non-stop for about a week straight, and we're going to be going over our thoughts on what we've played so far. So this is going to be a pretty long video, so for your convenience, we'll be breaking the video up into different sections, and we will have them time-stamped down below so you guys can skip around to the parts that you want to hear. And before we get started, consider giving this video a thumbs up. It helps us out in the algorithm, and this video took forever to make, so if you guys like this style of review, then we'll consider doing more like this in the future. So with all that said, Cookie, why don't you start us off? What are your opening thoughts about Star Wars Outlaws?
Well, I think the most important thing to say about this game is it's a lot better than I thought it would be. For people that don't know what our opinions were, or at least my opinion coming into this game, I was expecting a pretty bad game, a pretty manufactured, basic, janky kind of game that wouldn't really be that good. And it is better than that. I can definitely say that pretty confidently. In fact, I would say the first couple days of playing this, I was really, really enjoying it. We're both Star Wars fans, for those that don't know, massive Star Wars fans, and this is really throws you into the Star Wars universe very, very well. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I will say, though, as the days went on and more days, there were elements of the game that definitely brought it down a few pegs from being an excellent game to more of a not excellent game. So it's a mixed bag, which we'll get into obviously in detail as this video goes on, but I do have to say this game was a lot more fun than I thought, and I did enjoy it. I really did. But I can completely understand if someone hates this game, which is a weird spot to be in, but that's kind of my place. I really enjoyed it. Totally would understand if someone hates it.
And that's kind of how I feel too. Like I can see this being a very mixed bag. Some people are not going to like this, but other people are going to be like, wow, this is really fun and immersive, and you really feel like you're in the Star Wars universe. And I was the same way leading up to this game. You could see online people were not very interested in it. It didn't seem like there was much hype. And with this being an Ubisoft game, there's that, stigma of like, okay, it's probably just going to be a cash grab and it's going to be rushed. And that's how I felt. And then after playing it, the more I played it, I was like, okay, I'm really surprised here. This is actually pretty fun. And a lot of the stuff that would normally be boring in most of these big open world games, like these fetch quests and stuff, I even was having fun with those and just exploring and doing that kind of stuff. So this game took what I would normally not like in most open world games and made it fun and did their own little twists. So I did end up enjoying this game, but there's definitely some things that we're going to get into that is going to be pretty controversial, and it's definitely not going to be for everybody.
Break.
Yeah. Like I said, I totally, there's many elements of this game that if someone told me I am not going to play this game because of this, I would totally understand. I don't think there's anything wrong with that opinion, because there's just certain things that there isn't really a good excuse for why it's in the game, why it's an issue. There's a lot of mistakes like that. The one thing you said that I want to give you credit for, because I think it is the most legitimate thing, is this game really needed one more year in the oven. I think that's the best way to explain this game. It's really good in places. Could have been outstanding if they just would have given the developers more time. It's clear there were certain things they needed to iron out that they didn't. And I think that would go to a problem of Ubisoft or just them trying to get this out too fast. Like, they should have taken a little more time, and then I think they really would have had an excellent game.
Yeah, it definitely needs a lot more polish in a lot of places. I feel like, to me, this game is comparable to like maybe Mass Effect 1. Like, it's a good introduction to the franchise, but Mass Effect 1 to a lot of people wasn't the best of the trilogy. So I'm hoping that this game is them testing the waters and seeing what people like and dislike. And then if there's a sequel, they approve upon a lot of the things and critiques that come from this game, and then they make a sequel that's even better. That's my hope. But yeah, it definitely needs more time in the oven.
Considering the Mass Effect franchise, I think it either is a Mass Effect 1, which would be positive because then they'd get better as they get more, or it's going to be Mass Effect Andromeda, where it's a really good game that was just destroyed by a lot of little issues that ruined the entire game and made it bomb.
To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything. And right now, I just want to know what happened with Alec.
And thus made it, like, fall into the ether. So it's potentially going to be one or the other, I think, for this game.
Yeah, it definitely has a little bit of both. Mass Effect 1 vibes and Andromeda, which is, I mean, we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get more into that later.
Okay, so the first topic of discussion is let's talk about the story.
Each of you represents some of the most powerful criminal organizations in the galaxy. Pikes, Crimson Dawn, Hutts. It's a golden age for the underworld. The Empire's little Death Star gets blown to pieces and the law is distracted by a rebellion that won't quit. It's an opportunity to make millions.
What did you think of the overall story, the characters, the scripted missions, like that kind of stuff?
Well, I will start with the disclaimer here. We have not beaten the entire story.
Yes.
And we'll get into that too because the game is massive.
Yeah,
Much bigger than I thought. So that is one thing. But we've beaten most of the story. And what I would say from the story is it's pretty captivating. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like I'm insanely engrossed or anything, but it is interesting. It's fun. I am curious about the certain missions. Some of the missions are dumb, but most of them are like, okay, I think this is kind of interesting. It's neat being placed in the underworld of Star Wars, and this game does a really good job of making you feel like you really are a smuggler. It does balance that pretty well, and it does separate itself from other Star Wars games. I was worried this game in a lot of ways would be, in a way, a clone of the Jedi games from Respawn, and in a way it is in certain aspects, but for the most part it does separate itself. You don't feel like you're an overpowered smuggler most of the time. I think this game does a good job of telling an interesting story, and I've mostly enjoyed it. I would say that's one of the strengths of this game. I wouldn't say it's like gonna break your heart or anything, although maybe it will. Maybe it will by the end, but I think it's been engrossing enough that I care about what's going on.
Okay. I feel kind of the same way. I do like a lot of the characters. I do like a lot of the scripted missions. Some of them are pretty fun and engaging, and I really enjoy what they're going for, but some of the story stuff seems a little rushed and a little, I mean, it's not the greatest, but I think that's because of the open world aspect. I think there's just so much going on that it kind of takes away a little bit from the main story missions, because it felt like some of the characters were really rushed and were kind of just forced upon you. Like some of the friendships that you make, I'm like, why on earth am I even friends with this person? I just met them like 2 seconds ago. So there's some spots like that that's a little rushed and could be polished a little better, but overall, I do like the story. I wasn't expecting to like Kay Vess, but I do like the main character, and I wasn't expecting to like Nyx, the little pet that you get, and I ended up liking Nyx. Yeah, I think the story is pretty good, and most Star Wars fans, like most people probably going to buy this game, I think are going to enjoy the story.
I would say the one negative I have about the story is, and this isn't entirely negative, but sometimes the mission design is just not that creative. Sometimes it gets a little repetitive. And I'm not talking about the side quests or anything. I'm just talking about the main story itself having repetitive missions. Like there's some things where you kind of are doing the same thing over and over, and it's not that creative how they're putting it together. So there is a little bit of issue with mission design sometimes. Like they could have made this a little more interesting and different. Although some missions are creative, but I think that is one of the negatives the story kind of has, is the mission design isn't always the most interesting. You kind of end up going through the same vents. You do the same kind of mission in the same kind of place.
Yeah,
they kind of struggle in that spot.
Mm-hmm. And I think that comes down to the gameplay, which we'll get into a little bit more later with like combat and stuff. I feel like they just made the combat and everything very basic, and then that kind of drags the story down, and that's why it does feel a bit repetitive, is that, there's not much going on with the combat. So anytime you're doing a story mission, it kind of feels like I've done this like 6 or 7 times. But outside of that part, I do like the story that they're telling.
And I think the dialogue overall isn't too bad. For the most part, it's pretty good dialogue. There's some cringy parts, some cringy lines here and there, and some relationships just don't work at all in the characters. But in general, the dialogue is pretty good, better than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I think they do a pretty good job of carrying the story in that way.
Okay, so next up, let's talk about the open world. This is the first open world Star Wars game. So, there's a lot in the open world. There's like mini games and side quests and customization and speeders and the ships and exploration and a wanted system. Like, what do you think of the open world design?
I think the design, like, it was pretty good. This was probably the most shocking thing about this game for me, is how immersive the open world actually was. I thought it was a good chance it'd be very dead, and it really isn't. I mean, there are parts of the map where nothing's going on, but that's kind of expected, especially on a map like Tatooine. Like, you're going to expect part of Tatooine's not going to have anything going on. It's a desert. So it has that, but it doesn't feel like the whole area is dead. There's plenty of things going on. There's liveliness everywhere. You get to interact with all the different alien species, literally every one. I don't think there's any alien species that wasn't represented in this game in some way, shape, or form. And that's really cool. And you get to, there's just things going on everywhere. There's missions. It's an overwhelmingly high amount of missions. There's so much to do.
Yeah.
And that was the most shocking thing. And one of the best elements of this game is there's so much to do and so much going on.
Mm-hmm. Which I could see that being a turnoff for some people, because if you look at like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example, that game had so much content that people got bored with it. There was just so much fluff added into the open world. And this game definitely has some of that. There's definitely a lot of fluff, but this game does a great job of making it interesting. Like, there's so many like fetch quests and just random side missions, but I was still having fun doing it. I guess maybe because it's in the Star Wars universe, there's always something going on, and I'm riding my speeder, or I'm finding something on the side of the road along my journey. But I was having fun doing all these random side missions that normally would be pretty boring in most other video games. And to speak on the whole, like, the game feeling alive, that's one of my favorite parts about this game, is like going into a city and there's people everywhere and there's conversations about things going on constantly, and there's little side interactions. Like, there's so many different instances where I would talk to people on the street and they would have like a hint of like, go over here and do this mission, or you could overhear people talking and it would give you a clue onto like a hidden treasure. One example was I was talking to a merchant, and as I was looking through the merchant's inventory, I got sucked out of the inventory because stormtroopers interrupted me and was yelling at the merchant like, hey, you need to pay your taxes.
For a few credits, I could look the other way.
Oh, please, I don't have the credits.
Hey, don't you guys have a galaxy to protect or something? You sure you want to stick your nose into this, kid?
And then I had a dialogue option pop up of like, you could either pay off the stormtroopers to leave the merchant alone, or you could mind your own business and let them take care of that. And then depending on what your choice was, like, you could get a discount for the merchant. There's tons of that kind of stuff, and it really makes the game feel alive, and there's just constantly stuff to do and stuff to interact with, and I really like that.
Also, there's like 5 planets mainly that you go to in this game. I'm assuming that's it. I don't think there's going to be another one pop up. Like I said, we haven't fully beaten it, but I'm pretty sure it's just those 5 planets. The maps on each of those planets are really big. Like, it's a big area that you get to explore on each planet, with all the different kinds of things that you think of from that planet represented. And I was very impressed by that too. Like, you could have a mission in they all usually have one main city, and then they have tiny cities usually in other parts of the map. And then there's major parts that are just nature, or, are pretty open, and you'll find random Imperial outposts. You'll find the random factions have big outposts in the area. I really like the diversity of the environments. I really like how you could get a mission inside the city and you're like, oh my God, I got to go all the way out to the other side of the map, which I like, and I also don't like, because the fast travel system is a little wonky, because there aren't that many fast travel points, and you're like, oh God, I have to go. Like, it's fun when you do it the first couple times, but after that you're like, okay, I'm sick of riding my speeder bike like 3 kilometers to the other side of the the other side of the map. That they could definitely have improved there. But it is neat that you have that much area to explore and see all kinds of different things. And the environment does look different. It doesn't look repetitive either.
Mm-hmm. And they have really good attention to detail, because there will be like specific things. Like on Tatooine, I found like 6 or 7 different Easter eggs that were from the movies, which is crazy. And the same thing kind of goes for other planets. Like they took planets from the movies and they put them and mapped them out like exactly how they would be, and that's really cool. Another thing I like is like the mini games. There are a ton of mini games in the open world. There's like little arcade games you can play. There's horse betting. There's sabacc. I love sabacc. There's so many different sabacc tables, and there's like tournaments and like missions tied to sabacc. Sabacc was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. So I really like that. And that's a good way to make money too. Like if you're short on credits, you can go bet on some horses and make money, or go to place high stakes sabacc and bet like 1,000 credits, and then you can win a lot of money. Like I really like that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very immersive. Like you really feel, and I mean that's the main thing about the open world that's so attractive. It's so immersive. You really feel like you're in the Star Wars underworld, the Star Wars universe, from a perspective you don't get to see much in the movies or TV shows. And I think this really highlights that, which is why I want this game to be successful. But you know, we'll talk about that too a little bit. Now we did kind of mention the speeder and how important that is in general, and also there's the Trailblazer, the vehicle that takes you into space and everything. Do you feel like the vehicles kind of lived up to your expectations of the combat? Because they were both very important and you use them all the time.
The speeder, I'm a little disappointed with the speeder, and the ship is just okay. Like, I went and did a bunch of the space stuff, and once you finish the space stuff, there's not really too much stuff left in space to do other than like random side bounties that you get on occasion. But the ship is okay. Like, I've had better ship space combat before in other video games, and I think the ship stuff is just kind of passable. But the speeder was a letdown, because the speeder is just really janky, and I just don't like the animations and the smoothness of the speeder. I wish there was different speeder cosmetics and different speeder upgrades you can get. Like there's in this game, there's so many different variations of speeders that you see different aliens driving around the environment. Like, I wish I could have different model speeders and stuff. So being stuck with this one speeder all game, and there's only a couple upgrades you can get, and it's just the jankiness of the speeder, I was kind of let down with the design of the speeder.
But yeah, that would be really cool if there were a variation of different models, because you can upgrade your speeder and stuff, but it's the same speeder. I mean, it's just generally, you can change its paint job, but that's about it as far as customization is concerned. So that is kind of disappointing. I think the space combat is pretty, I'd say it's pretty poor. I mean, it gets better with upgrades and stuff, but in general, it's kind of like, I usually avoid all the space missions because they're just not that much fun. Collecting cargo is very janky and very hard to figure out how to actually do it, which is annoying and dumb. And yeah, the space stuff is, I wouldn't say disappointing, because I kind of thought it was going to be bad when I saw the trailers and stuff. So I'm not too surprised. Space combat's kind of what I expected, but it is kind of cool. And they showed this in the gameplay too, how you would be able to go from planet to space and back and forth without a loading screen. I do like that. I mean, it's not like necessarily looks unbelievably good, but it's still fun. I prefer that to having a loading screen for sure. So
I mean, it's definitely
I do still like that element.
It's a disguised loading
definitely
screen. And if you try to skip it, it just sends you to a loading screen. So
right. So yeah, it's the right. It's a neat idea, and I still like it. I still prefer it, but that's probably the neatest thing about space, which is not saying a whole lot.
Yeah. And then I briefly want to touch on the exploration in the open world. There's just so much to do in the open world. There's so many things that can distract you, and question marks on the map. You're like, oh, there's a treasure here. Oh, this person needs my help. There's just constantly things to do and explore. And since this is set in the Star Wars universe, I was kind of immersed the entire time I was exploring. It's like, oh, there's a new town I can explore. There's all these buildings I can go in. And I really like that part of the open world. Then the final thing I want to touch upon in the open world is the wanted system. Now, the wanted system is kind of intertwined with the factions, which is what we're going to talk about next. But you can like piss off the Empire, and if you have a max bounty system, like a max wanted level, they will send just endless troops at you. And if you get the max wanted level, they will send death troopers Like there will be like a death trooper encampment, and you have to go and kill all those death troopers to get rid of your wanted level. And the wanted system it's unique. It's kind of interesting. It's not like Grand Theft Autos. Well, kind of like Grand Theft Autos in a way.
Can be. Yeah.
The wanted system, it can be annoying at times because you can get wanted by multiple factions. So if you piss off all the factions, make them as angry as can be, they will send bounty hunters after you to try to kill you, and it will be pretty constant. So what ended up happening to me is I had the Empire mad at me, and I had the Pike Syndicate mad at me, and they were both just constantly sending stuff to kill me when I was exploring in the open world, and until I went and resolved that, I was just getting spammed with things. So if you don't take care of the wanted system, it can definitely be pretty annoying.
Yeah, I had a different experience with the wanted system overall because it only happened to me once that I've been wanted many times. Every time the Empire catches you doing anything on their premises, you're going to get wanted. But I only got max wanted once, and it was pretty bonkers because I was going away from the base and I thought I was scot-free, and then all of a sudden I was being chased by like 1,000 biker scouts, and then it just kept elevating. I'm like biker scouts, and then ATSTs, death troopers. I'm like, what is TIE fighters were coming out of the sky? I'm like, what is going on? I don't know how this escalated like this. And I just hid behind a house but you have to hide for a long time before they leave you alone. I mean, it was like, I'd say 5 minutes at least. Like I was at least hiding in the same spot for 5 minutes before they finally gave up the search. So they go hard if you really piss them off.
Yeah.
And we'll get into this in a second, but being in good with the factions definitely makes a big difference. So you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff happening in the open world so often.
Mm-hmm. They definitely make you conscious of your decisions, because if you do get wanted, it's a major pain in the ass, and it's pretty difficult when you're wanted. Like when you're driving on your speeder bike and you come across like 6 Imperial encampments or 6 roadblocks with ATSTs, you're going to be in for a rough time. Which kind of segues us into the factions. The factions is a major part of this game. It was one of the big selling points. So what do you think of the reputation system and the factions and how that all works?
Well, when we went over the gameplay about a month ago, I said that this is the live or die of this game. Like, if this game is going to be good, the faction system is going to have to be really immersive and interesting and good. Oh, I won't say it's perfect, but I will say it is a lot of fun. I really enjoy the faction system, and I think they overall did a good job on it. Not perfect, like I said. There's things that they could have done to make it more interesting, but I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's really neat. Your choices do matter, at least with the faction system, and with how much they like or dislike you, and depending on how much they like or dislike you, that can make a very big impact on how easy or hard your missions are going forward. So there are stakes there. Now, I don't know if there's as much stakes as I want there to be, because it does seem like certain things will happen regardless, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. Like, why would this faction be happy with you after you just murdered like 20 of them? Certain things like that don't make a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where the imperfect part of it comes in. But there are a lot of stakes. There's certain missions they give you, certain bounties that they'll give you, that if you fail the first time, that's over. You don't get paid. You don't get another chance at it. I really like that element of things. It puts some stakes. And the most important thing for me was, can 2 people play the game and have a totally different experience? With the factions, I think they definitely can.
Okay, Manda. You got a deal.
And you've got a job to finish. Take care of the bomb while I transfer the data. Working with the Dawn is very profitable.
I don't know if the story changes massively. We've compared our own games, and they kind of seem like they were mostly going the same way. You kind of take a different direction, but you end up in the same spot kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like they're crazy game changers, like everything just completely shifts, but it definitely changes your experience, and it is a lot of fun to work with the different factions and make choices and figure out how to balance them the best and how to get them all in a good spot. And it's pretty hard. I've never had all 4 factions like me at the same time.
Yeah, it is definitely a balancing act. But Yeah, I think some of the story stuff is definitely scripted no matter what. Because, for example, I was trying to get good favor with all of the factions except for the Pikes. So I was just pissing off the Pikes. I had the worst reputation you could get with the Pikes. And I just murdered like an entire camp of them and they hated me. And then the next story mission, the leader of the Pikes was like, hey, I need your help. It's like, why on earth would this guy want my help? I just slaughtered all of his dudes and he hates me. So that kind of stuff kind of takes me out of it, but I feel like that stuff's scripted and they can't really find a good workaround that.
Yeah,
but
that would have been tough.
Yeah, but I do like the reputation system. It's tied to certain rewards and discounts at stores, and if you're in good favor with them, you get access to their territory. So in different cities, they'll have sections of the city that's dedicated to the Hutt cartel. So if you're in good favor with them, you can go in and access their stores and, you know, place a balk with their faction and that kind of stuff. And then if they hate you, then you don't get access to their areas and you have to sneak in instead of just walking in. And they will, if they really hate you, they will send bounty hunters after you and it'll just be endless waves of enemies trying to kill you all the time. So you definitely want to be in good favor with these factions. And it's a balancing act because 9 times out of 10, like if you make one decision, it's going to piss off. Like if I do something for the Crimson Dawn, it might piss off the Hutt cartel and vice versa. So that part is interesting, but let's say you piss off all the factions. There's like little side missions you can do for each faction that are like little fetch quests and stuff. And if you do those, it will give you more reputation. So if you do tank one of your reputations with these factions, you can get that reputation back. It's just going to take you a bit of grinding to do so. But overall, I did enjoy this. This was a fun experience. I like what they have here, and I hope that if they do make a sequel to this game, they do something more with the faction system. Like, to me, I like that you're a smuggler. I like that you're doing missions for all these different factions. But for me, it's missing that bounty hunter aspect. Like, I like being a scoundrel, but every one of these factions would hire bounty hunters. So I wish that maybe if they do a sequel, they make you play as like a Mandalorian or something. And like, I like doing these missions for these people, but I wish there was bounties. Like, hey, this guy stole from me, go kill him. It's missing that factor for me. Otherwise, I like everything else about it.
I really like it, but you're right. I think it'd be really cool to see how they could build on it. Maybe that's with another character. Maybe it's with the same character, but they do more to like change the stakes, because I like the start that they've got here a lot. And I really would like to see them get a chance to improve on it. Again, another year in the oven would have helped this system too. But it is a lot of fun, and again, very immersive. It does make you feel very much a part of it, and it does really, really matter. Like, if you're not in good with the Hutt cartel on Tatooine, it is hard. It's so much harder. Tatooine is like, and I do like that they make it make sense. Like, it's not like all of them have presence on every planet. Like, the Hutts control Tatooine. Like, the other factions barely matter on Tatooine. And like, you know, it just, depending on the planet you're on, depends which factions are more important to be in the good with. And I like that. I think that's cool and makes sense with lore and everything else. And if you are in bed in the wrong place, then you are going to have to get really, really good at stealth. So that is going to segue us into stealth, because stealth is a gigantic part of this game, and as it really should be. But do you think they nailed stealth in this game, Swanee, or do you think they kind of missed the mark?
So I think stealth, it definitely played a bigger role than what I was thinking originally. And this, I guess we might as well just talk about combat in general in this section. The stealth is very important. And before I played this game, I said, like on stream or something, I was like, I'm just going to go in guns blazing. I don't want to do stealth all the time. And after playing it, I realized that, you know, you kind of do want to do stealth all the time, because if it goes guns blazing, it can very quickly get out of hand, especially if you're like infiltrating an Empire base. If you get detected, they send everybody after you. And some of the stealth I thought was fun and engaging, like going through the vents and using nicks to distract the enemies, and you can sabotage things. And the stealth felt more fun than I thought it was going to be, but that doesn't mean it's perfect, because the combat itself is so clunky that as soon as you exit stealth, it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of takes the fun out of it, at least for me.
I kind of feel like this is one of the things that died as it went on. The stealth was a lot of fun early in the game. As it went on, I got really tired of the stealth because it's very repetitive. There isn't that many options of things you can do in stealth. Like, it seems like a lot at the beginning, but when you've done stealth like 60, 70 times, it's like, okay, I only have a couple interactions that Nix can do. Nix can press all the buttons, but as far as actual distracting, he just distracts or attacks. There's nothing else he really does, and it's the same distraction every time. He doesn't do something new, like a different animation or something. So I mean, it gets very repetitive, and it can get incredibly annoying because there's some problems with the game that, like, Kay will do random things that makes no sense, like jump out of cover when you don't tell her to. It's like, what? And there's just a lot of little annoyances with stealth. And you're right, if you don't use stealth, you're gonna get just destroyed, especially early in the game before she's got like a little armor to work with. She just dies almost instantly. So you can't go up against 6 stormtroopers at the same time, which I like that element because she's just a smuggler. She's not a Jedi. She shouldn't be able to go up against a battalion of stormtroopers by herself. It's kind of a weird element that they don't quite get right. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not very good. I think overall. I think that's something they should have spent more time on because it's such a huge part of the game. It really should have more variation of what you can do.
Yeah, the combat overall is one of the biggest weak points for me. Because like you said, there's no Jedi, so it's losing that aspect of a Star Wars game, which is one of the major hooks for a lot of people when they play Star Wars games, is everyone wants to play as a Jedi, you want lightsabers, you want force powers. In this game, you don't have any of that. You have stealth, you have your primary blaster, and then you don't get any other weapons unless you pick them up off the ground. They're like temporary weapons. So you kill a stormtrooper, you can pick up their E11, or if you kill a scout trooper, you can take his sniper rifle, and you can use them until they run out of ammo. And those weapons feel strong and powerful, but the problem is I hate my primary blasters. I just always look for those weapons off the ground because they feel so much better and they're a lot more fun to use. And even after upgrading my default blaster with a bunch of upgrades, it's still is not very fun to use. Like, I'll shoot someone in the face 3 times and they just don't die, and I'm like, what the hell? But then if you run up and punch a stormtrooper twice in the head, it'll knock them out. So there's just a lot of random combat decisions that they made that I just don't really like. It's like the combat is very bare bones and minimum, and it just, I feel like since there's no Jedi and force powers, they really should have tried to make this combat seem more engaging and interesting, and they didn't. It's just very basic, and I could see that being a major turnoff for a lot of people, is after they see how wonky and kind of dull the combat is, I could see a lot of people not wanting to play this game because of that.
Yeah, I think the whole process of picking up weapons, and that's the only way you get to use unique weapons, is really disappointing. I would have liked to actually have at least 3 or 4 weapons of your own to like use in different situations. Like maybe you have a pistol, you have a rifle, you have a sniper rifle, shotgun. Like that would have been kind of neat to have one of each, and then you upgrade it however you want to. But to only be able to pick up the weapons as you go, maybe that's the more realistic approach, but it's kind of dull. Yeah, and the pistol is just so useless in most situations. And the caveat for that would be, well, maybe they just want you to use stealth all the time. And that's true, but there are certain times that they make you have to go up against like 6 or 7 stormtroopers at the same time, which doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, why is Kay even able to get out of this? By the rationale I thought they were going with. So the combat's just kind of confusing to me. It's not very good. The enemies aren't good either. You only go up, there's not that much variety to the enemies. They're all basically the same except for a couple of special troopers here and there. There's not a lot of variety to that either. This is clearly the one part of the game that they definitely could have done a lot better on, because it's just not entertaining. She's got her Deadeye thing, which is fine, I guess, but it's just the same thing as every other Deadeye you've ever seen, except maybe a little less realistic and a little less good.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm not a big fan of the Jedi. Like, there's 6 stormtroopers all around you, and you just like freeze time and take them all out, and none of them can hit you while you're doing it. Same with the speeders. You can't really fight when you're on a speeder. You can only use your Deadeye. So you're being chased by like 6 or 7 people on speeders, and you have to wait for your Deadeye to recharge, and then you activate it and you highlight the enemies, and then you don't even get to see your character shoot them. It just kind of shoots behind you as you're driving. And yeah, if they make a sequel, they definitely need to rethink their combat system, because I wanted the combat to be way better. I mean, it's passable, but it's not good by any means. And one of my biggest irks is how you pull out grenades. Like, you have to pull out grenades by opening up your satchel, and then, like, you have to hit left on the D-pad, and then you have to hit down to pull out a grenade, and it's designed poorly, and it's just not that fun, which kind of leads me into the abilities. The ability system for the combat is weird, because you have these different experts, and then you have to do, like, little mini side missions and objectives to learn different abilities. And a lot of the abilities some of them are okay, and then some of them are very underwhelming. I was really hoping that there was an ability where I could just carry one of those big weapons on my character until it ran out of ammo or something. Like, I was holding out hope, like, maybe if I unlock this character, I can have an ability where I can carry a sniper rifle. And that just never happened. I've unlocked most of the abilities in the game, and there's nothing like that, which is a big disappointment. And a lot of the abilities are very hard to unlock. Like, they're a lot more complicated than they need to be to unlock something very small and simple. So you can go hours and hours and hours of playing without getting a single ability upgrade, because you have to go out and specifically do certain things, like go find this item and go find me this material and go find credits, and then you can unlock an ability.
I mean, I just don't think it feels worth it. Like, I see those missions pop up and I'm like, I don't want to go to the other side. Like I talked about before about going to the other side of the map and how annoying that can be. I don't want to do that just to, like, get the start of a new ability. Like, that's just... I've seen those missions come up and I have no motivation to do them. Like, that just doesn't seem like it's going to be worth it. I'm like, after I do 3 of those missions, I get 1 ability.
It's not even a good ability.
It couldn't... I mean, I don't know, because I don't have it, but I'm like, this ability could be useless. Like, the last ability I got. So, those missions are kind of, like, dumb, and I don't know why they did that way.
I don't like the ability system. It's just not that fun and engaging, and it also takes away from, like, there's no XP system, so you can kill like 500 enemies and it doesn't matter whatsoever. You do not level up by killing enemies. You do not level up by completing missions. You have to do these specific guidelines to unlock an ability. So it kind of sucks the fun out, because it's like, oh man, I just snuck in, I killed every stormtrooper in this base, and I didn't get anything from it. So the whole combat system, I think, needs a revamp in the future if they're going to make a sequel, because I get what they were going for, but it did not translate into very much fun.
Yeah, so interestingly, this review has kind of gone like my experience in the game itself. Starts out really good and slowly gets worse, because as we get to the worst part of the game, which is the performance, for me at least, I think this is the worst part of the game. And it's not... in some ways, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, which is sad, because it's still pretty bad. This was the obvious thing that people had seen and have been talking about since the first trailer came out. Like, facial animations look weird. They don't look good. No. And they don't look good. Like, that didn't get fixed. They still look weird. They still look bad. I will say it didn't distract me as much as I thought it would. Like, I got through the game and it wasn't bothering me a ton, but there are some times it's just awful. Like, the lips are moving and the words don't fit what their mouths are doing. Like, it just looks super out of sync and super strange. The eye animations are sometimes really off, and it can definitely take you out. And for some people, that is a total deal breaker. And that, like, they can't get past that. And if you can't, you're not going to like this game, because it happens a lot. And it is weird and it is annoying, and it's definitely a problem. And I can't say it's any better than it looked in the original trailers. It looked like it was going to be bad, and it is bad. The facial animations are very poor.
Oh, yeah. Same kind of goes with her hair. Kay's hair is
her hair
awful.
Is wild.
I just grew used to how ugly Kay's character model is. It is awful in some cutscenes. Like, some cutscenes, her hair is all over the place. It's glitchy. One time I went down an elevator, and her hair stayed behind. I don't have any clip of it. I wish I did. But her hair, like, stayed up and my body went down with the elevator. There's tons of that kind of stuff, and there's just a jankiness to this game. Like, one, there's tons of spots where you lose frames. Like, I was losing frames constantly. I turned everything down to like low to medium in settings and the graphic settings, just to try to squeeze every frame I could out of it. And there is still some parts of the game you're just going to have frame loss. That's just how it is. And I froze / crashed, I think 3 times so far in my playthrough. Like, I was just walking around and suddenly the frames would dip and it would just freeze. My whole screen would freeze completely. I had to completely just go open up my task manager and quit out of the game because there was nothing I could do. And outside of the poor frame rate, there's just a clunkiness to the movements and the animations. Like, if you're hopping over a rail, or you're trying to dodge, or you're trying to just run side to side, there's just a clunkiness to your movements. It feels like it's not smooth. It doesn't feel good. It kind of takes me out of the experience because my character is moving in a way that doesn't look natural. Like, 1 second I'm here, and then it's like all my movements are like stiff. It's like I'm a robot. It's really hard to explain.
Yeah, and that's especially bad in certain situations like the stealth and the combat that we just talked about. It's very janky and feels very badly designed. Like, sometimes, like, you'll pop out in the weirdest moments during stealth, and they'll be like, "Why? That doesn't make any sense for her to do that in that situation. Why did she do that?" And with the combat, yeah, it's a janky feel. The space stuff is janky and doesn't feel quite right. Yeah, there's a lot of those little issues, and even the liveliness we talked about before is very weird looking sometimes. Like, the speeders that go past you on the road will look strange sometimes. People talking to each other can look strange. I mean, it all looks good if you're not focused in on it, but when you really focus in on it, it's like, ugh, that looks not so good anymore. There's a lot of that, and this is what comes back to my original point. More time in the oven would have fixed this stuff. This is very fixable stuff. Like, this is not like you need a whole new game. This is just the kind of stuff that you could have ironed out with more time. And this game screams that they did not have enough time. Like, they needed more time and they rushed this out.
It feels like they're just like, we want that Star Wars money now. We don't care. Yeah. We'll fix it later. And for those that are going into this looking for these types of glitches, you're going to notice them, and you're going to be very upset.
Look for it.
No. But for those that are playing this and they can turn their brain off to that sort of thing, like, there's a whole group of people that don't care about frame rate. They can play on 30 FPS. They don't care. Once I got used to 60 FPS, anything less than 60, I think looks awful now. And this game is just constant dips and ups and downs, and it's closer to 30 than it is 60. And like you said, it's like speeders driving by. It looks clunky, and it looks like they're teleporting because their animations is just janky. The combat, people getting behind cover, and people in cutscenes, it's just a jankiness, and it's just, they definitely needed like a whole nother year in the oven with this thing. And maybe it'll get better over time, but at launch, this is going to bother a lot of people.
I mean, I would say that I am one of those people that isn't that bothered by frame rate typically. Like, I can play at a lower resolution. It doesn't bother me a whole lot. But I can't get past the clunky stuff. The stuff where the animations look weird. And I mean, I still notice that kind of stuff. And if it's bothering me, it's really going to bother other people.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm very accepting of those things. Yeah, I can be pretty tolerant of bad graphical problems, but even it took me out of a lot of cutscenes. I'm like, I think there was one time Kay's eyebrows disappeared, which I don't even understand how that happened. I hope I found footage of it. I should have it playing in the background. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Her eyebrows just kind of, and I can't really get into what's happening in this story because I'm too focused on what happened to Kay's eyebrows. There's a lot of moments like that, and it's so disappointing because this is the stuff that I could see them fixing in a couple months. Not all of it. I don't think they can fix all the facial animations in a couple months, but they can fix all the little glitches and, stormtroopers that are standing on top of tables when they're not supposed to be. Stuff like that they can fix, but I judge the game by what it is at launch, and it's got a lot of issues.
Yeah, it definitely does. But now let's talk about our closing thoughts, conclusion. I know we talked about a lot of things that we didn't like, but overall, I did enjoy this game, even though it has those performance issues, it has the clunkiness of the combat. It's just something about an open-world Star Wars game felt so alive, and I felt so immersed, like I was in the Star Wars universe, and playing around with these factions that we've seen on the big screen and in like the Disney TV shows. These factions are brought to life, and it feels like I'm in the underworld, and I'm working with these these factions and like getting to see Jabba and doing missions for Jabba. Like that stuff is so cool to me. So, and I was engaged the entire time, like even those side fetch quests. Normally that would be really boring, but for some reason it works in this game. I mean, that's what a smuggler would do in the Star Wars universe. They would just smuggle things. Sounds very boring as a video game, but it was actually pretty fun. And I feel like this game could have a very bright future if this game sells well, and if they take the money and they double down and they're like, all right, the sequel, we're going all out, we're fixing all these problems, like a Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1, like I said at the beginning, was, it set the groundwork and people were intrigued and they liked it. And then for Mass Effect 2, they're like, all right, we're stepping up our game. We're going to make Mass Effect 2 phenomenal. And Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite video games ever. I could see them doing that. Like, the foundation here is great. I think they're just testing the waters because, it's a big gamble for them making a Star Wars game. They've never done it before. They didn't know if people were going to like a game set in, like, the Star Wars underworld. So it's a big gamble. So I'm hoping that enough people play this and they like it that they could make a better sequel. I guess that's my overall thoughts. Is this game was okay. I hope they learn from it and they make the next game better, because this has a very good foundation. There's a lot of stuff I liked here. I was having a lot of fun. It's just the performance, the combat, and that kind of stuff kind of takes me out of it. I really wish the combat was a lot better than what it is.
I'm kind of curious, is it because of our Star Wars fan bias, because we do love the Star Wars universe so much? Is that why we enjoy it? And if a person isn't a big Star Wars fan, are they going to get anything out of this game? Or is this a purely you got to be a Star Wars fan to enjoy this game?
I feel like you have to be a Star Wars fan. If you are not a Star Wars fan, you're I don't think there's much here for you, because it's just going to be a clunky, bad performance, dull combat mess. But
yeah, because all the stuff we liked has something to do with the Star Wars lore, the Star Wars world, and that's what we enjoyed the most. For a person that doesn't really care for the Star Wars world, I can't recommend this to you. But if you do love the Star Wars world, especially, and I think what's cool about the underworld is this is something that didn't get explored a lot in the movies and TV shows. It's like we got a taste of it, but we didn't get the whole thing, which I think was a really smart idea for them to focus in to make a video game about it, because it's not something we get to enjoy in the movies and past video games and TV shows and stuff. So this gives us that opportunity to really get in deep. And at least so far, again, the story could change on us, but they allow you to be a part of the underworld. They don't be like, all right, and now you're a good guy. I mean, I guess you might make that decision maybe, but we'll see. But I like that they let you be a part of the underworld and make all these choices and do quote-unquote bad stuff.
They let you make
that's neat.
Bad decisions. Like, you can just stab everyone in the back if you want to, just to make a quick buck, which is cool. I like that. I like not being forced to be the good guy. And there's a couple different dialogue things that pop up in the game where it seems like Kay doesn't really care, like, just straight up hate the Empire as much as some people. Like, she doesn't like the Empire, but it feels like she's more open to, like, working with the Empire in a couple different areas, which is...
She doesn't like the rebels, which is an interesting point of view. That Disney's kind of played with that a lot lately in their TV shows and stuff, about the rebels aren't perfect either, which I really like that element of it. But, I like how they deal with the rebels and the Empire in this game, so far at least. So, I really... As a Star Wars fan, I really hope they get another chance to make this really good. I just don't know if that's going to happen. There's a lot of bad press coming out about this game before it even comes out, and I'm not sure the game is good enough to overcome that bad press, because the stuff that people are really upset about is mostly true. Like, the facial animations is terrible, and it does have performance issues. But if people think that this is just a run-of-the-mill extreme cash grab, I wouldn't say that. I know Ubisoft's got some pretty crazy versions of the game and stuff. That's another story.
Yeah.
But as far as the game itself, like, there's a lot of effort they put into this game. I can definitely say that. Like, there's a lot of people that love Star Wars that worked on this game. I can feel that in the stuff that they did. It's just, it's held back from being a great game because it clearly seems like they didn't have enough time.
I will say, though, that this game is very friendly to, like, new players and people that are new to video games. So maybe you're a Star Wars fan, but you're not really big into video games, but you thought this looked interesting and you want to check it out. This isn't that difficult of the game because the combat is so basic. I feel like they were just playing it super safe with this game, and they didn't want to get too into it because they wanted to sell as many copies as possible. So that might be why the combat is so dull. And because of that, like, my girlfriend could probably play it, for example. She's I'm getting her into video games. She's not the best at video games, but I feel like this is a game that is one she could play because it's not too hard. So if you're worried about difficulty, I don't think you have to worry about that for Star Wars Outlaws. So to close it out, if we had to rate the score out of 10, what would you give this game, Cookie?
I think I would give it a 7.3. It's a good game. I enjoyed it. I was thinking a lot higher before, like in the early game part of it, because it was really entrenching me into the world and everything. But as you go along, the performance really does start hurting the game and the repetitivity and stuff. So, yeah, I think 7.3 is a pretty good place to put this game. But like I said before, a lot of elements that people could hate. But I enjoyed the game. It's a good game. I'd recommend it, especially to Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. When I first started off, I was really loving it. But then, as you said, the more we play it, the more repetitive it got, and the combat and everything. But I was having a lot of fun. So I'm sitting somewhere between like a 6 and a 7.5. So maybe I'll just go like just a 7 or maybe a 6.8, 6.9 out of 10, just because those performance issues just bog it down so much. If this game had better combat and better performance and it was smooth as butter, I would be giving it like an 8, maybe 8.5. Maybe even higher. It's just that combat and the performance is so clunky and not very fun that I definitely have to knock at some points. And as of how it is at release, I'm sitting at like high 6s out of 10. But it doesn't mean it's a bad game. I still enjoyed it, and I think Star Wars fans are going to enjoy this game. It's just there's a lot of people I feel like are going to be turned off and are probably going to skip out on it. So I would say maybe wait till this game's on sale or something to pick it up. I definitely wouldn't pay full price of like the $100-some to get it early. It is not worth that. But if you're a diehard Star Wars fan and you need a Star Wars game immediately, I'd maybe get it on release day or wait till it goes on sale and wait till they have some like patch fixes and stuff to try to fix some of that clunkiness.
Yeah, it's probably going to perform better in about a month or two, which is kind of a shame. But that is kind of modern gaming, so
yeah.
That is what it is.
All right, so that's going to do it for our thoughts on Star Wars Outlaws. Let us know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. This was a long video, so I appreciate you guys making it this far. If you made it this far, consider giving it a thumbs up because it helps us out in the algorithm. And if you guys like this sort of thing, we will continue to do these like dual reviews in the future. So if you guys are new here, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. That way you don't miss out on any future videos. And that is going to do it for us. And we will talk to you guys in the next video.